Watch this.
More than a year and a half since the COVID-19 vaccine became available to most of the general public, our youngest are finally getting their shot at getting the shot.
Now we're kind of, besides celebrating the history, we're looking to the future of agriculture, and that's kind of what we're all about this time with Dairy Days.
It was once the center of Idaho's dairy industry. Despite its lack of dairy farms today, the city Meridian is still celebrating its roots every year. Now seems like a good time to ask you to text the show. I know, you don't even know what we're going to talk about yet. But that hasn't stopped several of you from sending us random text messages anyway. We all want waffle fries. We haven't really mentioned COVID this much, or as much, I should say, on the show. Of late, things are far less serious now than they were, I don't know, even as much as 6 months ago. But to be clear, we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. Today, there is some good reason to start talking about COVID again. Starting tomorrow, there will be a vaccine for children aged 16 months up to 5 years of age available. It's an age range that hasn't had access to COVID vaccines to this point. Meanwhile, some adults have had that access for about 18 months. The vaccine being available for young kids is a piece of this COVID puzzle in the sense that almost every single person in our community is now eligible to get a vaccine should they want one. It's an incredible milestone for sure, but still there are a lot of questions, we know, still out there about the vaccines for kids, and lots of them coming from parents, which is why Joe is going to join me now to talk about some of these questions. But some of these things, you know, some people get excited about this news of that age eligibility dropping down to about 6 months. Idaho health experts, you spoke to one of them today talking about this access to kids.
Yeah, and it's a major deal, Brian, and I know a lot of this can get lost through the last 2 years, but the fact that, number one, we had a vaccine less than a year after the outbreak is a big deal.
Right.
It's also a big deal now that we're going to have basically the entire population eligible for a vaccine. 20 million more kids are now going to be eligible to get that COVID vaccine. And really, the only people not eligible starting tomorrow are going to be very young infants. This is eligible for the vaccine, to be very clear. 6 months and younger will be the only group starting tomorrow that cannot get a vaccine in the United States for COVID. Now, both Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines are now authorized for anyone aged 6 months and older. Now, Pfizer's vaccine had previously been authorized for people aged 5 and older. Moderna's was for 18 and older. Now, for months, really since the rollout of the vaccine, there has been those who have had questions about side effects or impacts of getting a COVID vaccine. And they have some totally fair questions. And the answer is that COVID vaccine is highly effective and safe for all ages of people. Now, when you throw kids into the mix, though, some families, they will hesitate to get their kids vaccinated out of the fear of the unknown, a fair fear. Now, for perspective on the risk-reward equation, I spoke with Idaho health expert, member of the governor's COVID task force, Dr. David Pate. Now, Dr. Pate says he knows that some will be hesitant to vaccinate. We've seen that clearly over the last 2 years. But he says that there is a lot to consider when comparing getting the vaccine to getting COVID.
A lot of people, when they're doing their risk-benefit analysis, it's, well, the risk of getting the shot or not getting the shot. That's not really what you should be balancing. It's the risk of the vaccine versus the risk of COVID. And do some people that get the vaccine have adverse effects? Absolutely, people do. And we don't have any vaccine that never has had an adverse effect. However, essentially everything you can tell me that you would be worried, and we hear, you know, some people in Idaho say, oh, you know, blood clots, myocarditis, you know, they throw out all these reasons why, oh my goodness, you shouldn't get a vaccine. The problem is they're not telling you the whole story. Well, what's the risk of getting those things with COVID? And I can tell you that for most of those things, it's 20 or more times more likely if they get COVID. So again, the risk benefit is vaccine versus COVID, not vaccine versus not doing anything.
And the other factor for getting your child vaccinated is the community's battle against COVID. And getting your kid vaccinated can really help the community at large, especially some of those vulnerable populations, grandparents, people that have autoimmune diseases, et cetera. We've heard about that for months. But when we have the kid aspect now into this situation where you have kids 6 months to 5 years that until tomorrow would not be able to get a vaccine, you talk about community spread. We know kids are at school a lot. We know that kids are out in the community talking with other kids. So, of course, they're going to have the transmission between kids. Well, transmission, according to Dr. Pate, is also the driver of mutations. And there's this common thought out there that, well, with every mutation, it gets, weaker and weaker, the virus. Right. That's not necessarily true. And Dr. Pate says with the viruses getting more contagious, it's important to get kids very vaccinated before we get back to school in the fall. Is there a guarantee what's going to happen with the next mutation? We don't know. But the idea with getting kids vaccinated and taking appropriate COVID precautions is about giving us the best odds of being healthy as a community.
Did you ask Dr. Pate really quickly if these variations, like the vaccines, have kept up with these variations and these mutations?
To an extent, yes. It's impossible to say one-in-one that every vaccine is the same on every variant. As we saw with Omicron, it did have a different effectiveness. The bottom line here is you're eligible for the vaccine, and starting tomorrow, almost the entire country is. You should get one. Talk to your primary health care physician if you have questions.
All right, thank you very much, Joe. Well, it's the newest holiday on the federal calendar. Juneteenth falls on June 19th. It became a national holiday just last year when President Biden signed it into law. Emancipation Day or Freedom Day or Jubilee Day or Black Independence Day, depending on your location. Well, that was yesterday on the calendar, but today for those who take the day off. Idaho joined in the recognition of Juneteenth, allowing state workers a paid holiday, also last year. The 19th of June, 1865, that was the day Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and officially liberated 250,000 enslaved blacks in Texas. 2.5 years after Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln signed and issued an Emancipation Proclamation. The Lone Star State was the last stop for that Union troop Southern State tour, and there in Galveston, Major General Gordon Granger issued General Orders No. 3. Since that day, Juneteenth has been celebrated as an important piece of black history and culture in our country. For those outside that culture, though, there's still a few questions about the new national holiday. And we got this email from Art Ball this morning. I agree we should celebrate the end of slavery in the U.S. However, wouldn't December 6th, the ratification of the 13th Amendment, be a more appropriate date than June 19th? Well, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, and it was ratified by the states on December 6, 1865, as we mentioned, nearly 6 months after June 19th. But as we said, slavery was ended in the rebellious states on January 1st, 1863, with that Emancipation Proclamation. And that proclamation still took 2.5 years to make it to Texas. Well, actually, it didn't. You see, they all knew about the emancipation in Texas. There was just nobody there to enforce it. That is, until those Union troops showed up and General Order No. 3 was issued, which said, this is what it said, "The people are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." That's what it said, all slaves are free. It was 93 words in total, this order. But nearly half of them actually urged these former slaves to kind of stick around and work as hired hands for their former masters, believe it or not. So I asked this question of Philip Thompson. He's the executive director of Idaho's Black History Museum, whether we should be celebrating December 6th over June 19th, and his answer was this. Well, the ending of slavery is the realization of what the 13th Amendment promised actually being delivered, aside from the fact that people were still enslaved on Indian reservations. So what he's saying is basically the 13th Amendment actually didn't end slavery in the United States completely. There were still black slaves on Indian reservations until 1866, believe it or not. It took another treaty to get that taken care of. So Juneteenth, like we said, is a day within the black community that has a special meaning to those within the black community. And no disrespect, Art, but this is their day, not necessarily for the rest of us. And it's one the rest of us should just kind of respect. Take part in it, learn about it, see how it is celebrated and what the meaning of it actually is. But I guess the question should be, haven't we already kind of co-opted enough by making it a national holiday and giving those who knew little about it up to about a year ago a day off? Do we need to get our hands into this too? All right, several Idaho cities and counties are observing Juneteenth today, which includes federal buildings, some city and county offices, banks, even some retail stores. But not everyone closed their doors today. The city of Nampa, well, their employees didn't have the day off. Instead, they're going to treat it like a floating holiday, and they're going to push it until December 23rd. That's the day they're going to get it off. The City of Eagles offices were open today, as were the offices in the city of Kuna, but they gave their employees the option to take the day off. And it's completely legal. According to the Idaho Association of Counties, no county is obligated to observe or even recognize federal holidays, something Idaho County commissioners asked about back in October, and a lot of people on social media fired up. During a county meeting on October 19th, commissioners discussed the possibility of adding Juneteenth to their 2022 calendar. But you see, that posed a problem. According to the meeting minutes, if they observed the holiday, it would mean delaying the close of tax day for second half collections. Though the county treasurer did not have a problem delaying that deadline by one day, Chairman Skip Brandt did and asked for an opinion from the Idaho Association of Counties. During the next meeting a week later, the Idaho Association of Counties said they did not have to observe the holiday, so they decided to not add it to their calendar. That's kind of how that all went down. And during their next meeting a week later, the Idaho Association of Counties said they did not have to observe it, so that's what went. So what was the problem with this whole thing? In an email to the Lewiston Tribune back in late October, Chairman Brandt said this: "In this woke movement world, I recognize that I am a white male, thus there is nothing I can do to not be called a racist." That's debatable. Plus, I have never and will never slack away from doing what I think is best for Idaho County. We have enough recognized holidays in America. Americans need to get back to work, not find another excuse not to work. I'm not against anyone celebrating it, he said. But the real question, as I suggested today, is where are the holidays going to stop? That's according to Brandt. By the way, Governor Little ordered state offices closed on Friday in observance of the holiday. At one point in its early history, the city of Meridian was an agricultural hotspot. More than 90 years after it became Idaho's dairy hub, the community continues to celebrate its heritage, despite the fact its dairies aren't there. You know, we love getting into the history of Idaho, so tell us more about what other pieces of Idaho history you'd like us to learn about. You can text us anytime. The number is on your screen, 208-321-5614. This is also the place where you can share your comments, your questions, and your complaints that we may share at the end of the show. So make sure to include your name and the hashtag #the208. Yes, Idaho is known as the Great Potato State, but did you know we are the third largest producing dairy state in the country, behind only California and Wisconsin? But we're better than all those states, those two states, when it comes to production of both milk and cheese. Cheeseheads, get out of here. But as of 2020, there are only 437 dairy farms across the entire state, most of those centered in the Magic Valley region. But back in the day, the dairy center of Idaho was in the center of the Treasure Valley, a fact that still carries the honor it once held, even if it's really not the case anymore. Back in 1929, what started out as a celebration quickly morphed into an annual gathering of not only dairy farmers, but the entire Meridian community. And this weekend, Thousands are going to take over downtown Meridian as part of the 93rd annual Meridian Dairy Days.
It's probably going to be strange for people that just moved here, and why do we have dairy days? I can't find a dairy anywhere.
That wasn't the case a century ago, when Meridian was the acme of Idaho's dairy industry.
We had the creamery here right in Meridian, where the city hall is now, and there was dairies every square mile, probably had 4 dairies.
That's 4 dairies per square mile. In fact, the city built its first creamery before it even incorporated. Then came the Ada County Dairymen's Co-op in June of 1929, just before the onset of the Great Depression, which helped more than 3,000 farmers feed their families by sending their milk to the Meridian Creamery. In 1948, the creamery included a dairy show in its calendar, making the future Meridian Speedway their home a year later.
You know, people brought their animals, their cows, to show to their neighbors, how good their cows were.
Today, the dairy show is just for FFA and 4-H students to show off their cows and goats, but they're still shown at the Speedway, where horsepower is replaced by milk might.
Probably a lot of people don't know that, but that'd be the North Grandstand, as they call it. Right underneath there is the dairy barn. That's where they used to house up to, I think, 200 head of dairy cows for the show.
Proceeds from the stock show go towards scholarships for those students, and this year, they gave out $10,000, which is a lot of milk money.
Everybody still has to eat, and even though there's not that much farmland left here, we hope that these youth will come back and help out the agriculture in Idaho.
Okay, so the dairy show has remained a constant over the last few decades. Dairy Days has continued to add on a whole lot more over the years. Music, live music, carnivals, pageants, a parade even. Hans told us the Dairy Days Parade has become a victim of its own success. Every year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and this year they're expecting nearly 100 floats to parade downtown street there, followed by a fireworks show. The creamery, by the way, that closed around 1970, and that's when the milk was shipped to Caldwell for processing. In 2008, Meridian City Hall was built in its place. You've heard us refer to the 208 as a conversation, and one of the hallmarks of this show is that conversation happens through text messages, usually. You send them in during the show, and we share them at the end of the show, or you reach out to us after the show because maybe you DVR it, or you watch it on YouTube later, and we incorporate those messages into other shows, like Later, which I assume inspired this text message we recently received from Filer. I'm just curious, approximately how many texts do you get during the 32-minute show? Hashtag the 208, nice job. Just curious and Filer. Well, curious and Filer, it really depends on the topic we tackle that day. Some days we get about a dozen. Others we get multiple dozens, which is why we can't share all of them at the end of the show. Perhaps if the show was 32 minutes instead of the actual 29, we could share a few more. A lot we don't share because they are too long, they don't just make sense, or they're just mean-spirited for various reasons. We try to avoid the insulting and name-calling ones. Others we haven't shared, that is, because, well, we assume they weren't meant for us. You see, 208-321-5614, that number has seen its share of unintended texts.
They're simple mistakes, sometimes sent with a simple message. If you see Mom, tell her I have her phone, which we couldn't tell if it was more of a promise or a threat. Most realize the mistake almost as soon as they hit send. How are you two doing this morning? Oops. Others, not so much. Love Lemp and 8th Street. Okay, Love Lemp and 8th Street. It's live. Never mind. Good, because we have no idea what that means anyway. Many take the time to text us even though they seem short on it. Like Ron, hashtag I'm busy, I'll call you later. Still waiting for that call, Ron. We've got a lot of bulletins about being busy. Just finishing a call, be 3 minutes late, says Randy, who seems pretty specific about the time of his tardiness. Someone else seems pretty excited about their short schedule. Yay, I have a meeting from 9 to 10 today. That's it. That's the text. Text that could use a pinch of punctuation. Yes, the red, white, and blue bear claw is brand new, just put on this evening, go Grizz. Is a random and run-on text. We hear about what Nathan wants. I want waffle fries. While another wants to go to breakfast in the AM, which is a good time to go to breakfast. Think it's at Copper Kitchen, but not a good time to go to the Copper with a K kitchen, because they closed earlier this month. Meanwhile, in another kitchen, we assume is around the corner, the fudge is made. I think it turned out okay. Whew, which is good because bad fudge, and you can end up with a message like this one from Kathy. Hi there, how are you two? Success with pill last night and this AM. Hunger plus a little food and meds work. Followed by a cat emoji and some paw prints. I mean, with a little food, meds, and kitty emojis, everything does seem a bit better. Finally, with summer vacations coming up, Julie is here for us just in case. Hi, just wanted to let you know we can take care of things while you're gone. I can spend a little time with the dogs for you. We will be sticking close to home anyway, with turkeys and an expectant goat.
Yeah, turkeys and an expectant goat. We wanted to know more about that too. So we actually responded to that text message from Julie from Fruitland, and we asked her about it. She told us today that message was for her friend Kate. That's who it was meant for. And they take care of each other's animals when one of them goes out of town. Julie says they have a cow, 2 pigs, they have a chicken, many chickens at their place, which means Kate has her hands full when it's her turn. But they also have 5 Nigerian dwarf goats, she says, one of which is due to give birth around July 4th. And when they give birth, it's called kidding. Yeah, no kidding. That's Sterling, by the way, the pregnant goat. That's what we got the name. As for the turkeys, well, they're apparently due too. Julie says 15 are supposed to arrive at the post office next week, which is the week of the 27th. So, neighbors of Julie and Fruitland, get ready. Oh yeah, it's fun when a random text message like that turns into an interesting conversation. We love it. You know, it's hard to believe, but it's been more than 2 months since we lost our colleague and friend, Larry Gebert. This coming Saturday would have been Larry's birthday, and we're going to celebrate it in a big way. We're going to host our first ever Be Like Larry Day. Technically, you can interpret that however you wish. You want to wear your khakis and your sneakers and put on a Larry mustache? That's cool. Go for it. Want to hand out string cheese to your coworkers? That's a great idea as well. But here at KTVB, we're going to celebrate how Larry would like to celebrate by giving back to the community. Governor Little and Boise Mayor Lauren McLean have even proclaimed Saturday, June 25th, as a day of service. Something his family says speaks volumes to who Larry was.
I think doing nice things just spreads, and I think that's one thing. Larry has a big impact on the community, is that he did nice things every single day, and I think he's gone now, and I think that's actually something that's gonna, we have to continue it because he's gone and he can't do it anymore, and so it's up to us.
So we'd love for you to get involved as well. You can either do it on your own or you can join us and do us. Just text the word Larry to the same number we ask you to text questions and comments about the show, 208-321-5614. We're going to send a link directly to your phone with more information about service projects that are happening on Saturday that you can join in. All right, let's get to your comments for today. This one sent in from Pierce. If the CDC is approving vaccinations in toddlers on the basis of a study that only involved 160 children, no way would I want my child vaccinated with messenger RNA and no idea of the potential long-term consequences. I looked it up, actually, Pierce, and it appears the Pfizer vaccine had about 4,500 kids involved in their studies. Moderna had about 11,000, almost 12,000 kids involved in their study. So 160 is a bit of an under-exaggeration. Sorry, but I don't agree with your statement that Juneteenth is their holiday. We have a tendency to reflect on our nation's sad history of slavery, but too often fail to celebrate that half of the nation's spilled blood and treasure to end it. This holiday belongs to all of us. Okay. The chicken poop drop pool, is that still happening in Meridian Dairy Days? Only one way to find out. We'll see you tomorrow.